welcome to Ahead of the Curve. I am Jonathan Gellner, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have on Billy Berry, head baseball coach at Tennessee Wesleyan University. Billy was the head coach of TWU from 2005 to 2015, and then returned in July of 2017 after a 2-year stint at the Baylor School. Billy and Weslyan have won 2 NAIA national championships during both of his stints, and in his 20-plus years of coaching, he has seen over 40 former players move on to professional baseball. Billy wants to continue to help young men use baseball as an avenue to get their education, to continue the bulldog baseball success, and have kids that represent the school, their families, and the program with pride. So on the show, we talk about how he uses the Wesleyan tradition to ingrain the culture every year. We discuss how he helps players to own their career and hold them accountable. And he tells us how to attack the day every day. Here is Billy Berry. Billy, welcome to the show.
What's up, Jonathan? How are you?
I'm good. We are currently experiencing some 82-degree weather in Tulsa, so it's actually really nice. So you get up in the morning and it's like, is it like October or November down here? I don't know if you guys are doing that right now or anything like that, but it's been good.
No, we're experiencing the same 90-degree weather that we've experienced for the last however many years I've lived here. So
I love that.
It's been tough, for sure. So.
Fun times. But for our listeners who want to get to know you, can you give us a short snapshot of why you decided to get into coaching?
I can. So when I graduated from Bluefield College in 1998 and had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. So my dad was a CPA, so I convinced him to trade out some work for an apartment complex that he was doing the books for. And 2 of my other buddies, we moved into this apartment complex. I worked 3 part-time jobs to make 1 full-time job, and didn't have a bank account, and kind of just was baseball was over, and was kind of just trying to figure out what to do. And I did that for about 6 months, and finally, the high school coach that I played for, John Morano, called me, and basically, he asked me, did I want to help with the high school program? And I was done with baseball, man. It was kind of like one of those deals where it was like, hey, man, I played, and now I'm gonna, enjoy whatever I missed while I was playing. And so I kind of hemmed and hawed. I said, yeah, I'll think about it, whatever. And then he called me back about a week later, and I think at that point in time he kind of realized I wasn't doing a whole lot, and kind of said, "Hey, this is really, I'm not asking you anymore. I'm kind of telling you this is what you're going to do." So I did it, and man, the first year was 1999. I got a chance to work with a buddy of mine that I played with. Braxton Bell was the other assistant, and we won the state championship that year, the AAA state championship in Virginia. And man, from that point on, I was hooked. And so that's kind of where it started. It was 2 years at Mills Godwin High School. Then it was 2 years at J.R. Tucker High School. I worked for a guy named Will Hicks. And then I made the leap and got into college and went back to my alma mater in Bluefield and started there. And then the guy I was working for, Greg Stewart was his name. He was from out west, and he and his family decided to move out west. I was in college baseball for 2 years, and had left my hometown and moved back to Bluefield. And so he left, and they gave a 27-year-old a job that he probably wasn't qualified for, and so I got an opportunity to be the head coach at Bluefield for 2 years, and it was great for me because there was really there wasn't a lot of expectation. We had 3.5 scholarships, and we're really not. We were in the bottom half of the AAC conference at the time, which is the same conference that Wesleyan's in. But we made a couple. We won some games, and we kind of made some noise in the tournament. We actually beat Wesleyan the first night, my second year, the first night of the tournament in the 1-8 game, and so I think that kind of maybe sparked some interest from some Wesleyan people because their head coach was leaving at the end of the year. Ashley Lawson was the head coach here from 2000 to 2005. And he left in the middle of the year to take an area job with the Padres. So Willie Boss became the interim head coach. He was getting married that year, and they had already told the school that he was moving to Chicago, where his wife was from. And so he was on an interim tag. And then in the summer of 2005, I was able to get the job here at Wesleyan, and been here ever since, except for a 2 year stint from 2016 16 and 17. I stepped away and then came back in 18. So all told, I've been here now 13 years. So I credit a lot to my high school coach, because if he hadn't have really pushed me to kind of get involved that first year, I'm not sure that I would have done this for a living. I don't know what I would have done. I'd have eventually had to figure something out, because I was kind of, but a lot of credit goes to him, because I think without his push and without his nudge on a 23-year-old kid, I don't think I'd be doing this for a living. So I'm always, I don't talk to him near as much as I'd like to, but I always make it a point to make sure that he knows how much I appreciate the fact that he got me into this and got me started.
I love that, and I think we all go through that moment whenever we get done playing, no matter what level it is, where we are just done, like we're
Yeah,
done with the game,
yeah,
and then you kind of go through some soul searching, and you're like, man, it did, the game and the people that I was around more even than the game, they are kind of what bring me back, and I think I went through that. I know that I went through that too, and that's so interesting. But let's talk about so you've had several different steps along the way, and you've had two at Wesleyan, which is pretty cool. Let's talk a little bit about that and whenever you took over the job in 2005. And so what were some of your first steps? So you take the job, you interview, you go through the interview process, you get the job, you're excited, you tell your family, you tell your friends, and then you decided to do what? So what was like the vision like? What were some of your first steps? What did you go all in on, and what did you decide was really important first?
I think the biggest thing was, one, I was scared to death, because I was 20. I think I was 29 when I got this job. So I've always said that Tom Griffin got the Carson Newman job, so I could get the Wesleyan job, because I think Wesleyan, Tom was an alum, and he was up for the job as well. So, but he got the opportunity to take the Carson Newman job. So I think the only reason why I got this job is because Tom Griffin got the Carson Newman job. But I was scared, man, to be honest with you, because I was coming from a program where there wasn't a whole lot of expectation to taking over a program where there was a huge amount of expectation. So I think that was the first, just the kind of the fear of, one, can I do this? Can I kind of dig in, and can I do this job, and keep it, where it is, and try to move it forward. So I made I think the best decision I ever made was, I was very fortunate at the time that I had a relationship. I had a really good relationship with Ashley, which I still do to this day. And so I called him, and basically, he was on the road with the Padres, and I basically just kind of asked him, I said, hey, man, would you come to Athens for, maybe 2 or 3 days? He was living in North Carolina at the time. And I said, would you come to Athens for 2 or 3 days and let me sit down and just kind of pick your brain on how the program works, what it does well, those sort of things. I mean, you can see things from afar, and you knew what made them good. I mean, they had really good players. They were always, so just technically sound, and things like that. But what are the inner working stuff of the finished product that I see on a Friday, Saturday when we play you? You see what I'm saying? And so he did that, man, and honestly, it was awesome for me, because it gave me such an understanding of the program. It gave me such an understanding of the way they practiced. It gave me such an understanding of the way they attack certain things. Um, and the biggest thing for me was to come in and not try to turn things upside down. The program was winning. They were coming off, the year before I took the job. They'd made it to the Super Regionals. They were a 2 out of 3 series away from going to Lewiston. So, you've got a guy that's coming from a team that's, middle of the pack to the bottom of the pack in your own league, that's taken over now the number one team in the conference. And what kind of credibility are you going to have if you walk in and say, hey, we're going to scrap everything that you guys have ever done, and we're going to start this over new? So really what I did in my first couple of years is I adopted a lot of what they were already doing, and kind of humbled myself to be able to say, hey, man, this might not be the way that I would do it, but this is, I think, going to be the smoothest transition for those kids, and it's going to be the smoothest transition for me. So it's not broke right now, so let's don't try to fix it. And over the years, I think we've kind of evolved into some different things that we'll probably get into later on. But I thought it was really important for those guys that were juniors, or those guys that were returning junior, sophomores that were going to be juniors, and juniors that were going to be seniors, that we just kind of kept it as close to what they'd done as we possibly could, because I felt like that would be the smoothest transition. And the first year we went back to the super regionals, and I think a lot of that was a testament to just keeping things very, very familiar to those guys, and not trying to be the new guy that came in and go, hey, it's my job now, and I'm gonna, we're gonna do things this way. And I think the biggest thing that you talk about here at Wesleyan is the tradition, and I think that was the one thing that I learned at a really early age in this job, is that the tradition is going to last no matter who the head coach is. And if you buy into that and you humble yourself to it, then you can be really successful here.
No, that's really good. And let's unpack that for just a second. So you talk about tradition, and you guys have been a winning program, before you took over. So, I've been at several different schools, and several different stops along the way as well. And there are some schools that have good tradition that lean on that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some that lean on that to, I guess, in a word, they rely on that to explain why it's important. And so there's kind of there's an interesting dynamic there, because you could say, hey, our tradition is so good, that's why we're not going to change anything. But it's something that you look to the past to be able to see, hey, this is a really good program. It's going to be a really good program, and we're obvious. It's a really cool team aspect to be able to do that together, and
Mm-hmm.
to continue the tradition. I guess what I'm asking is, what's kind of that balance between looking back to say, hey, this is our tradition, this is what we've always done, and then the kids are like, hey, but this is our team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is us here right now. It doesn't, and you, I'm sure you're the same thing. We don't want to look back and say, hey, we've done all this in the past, and that's why it should continue.
Right.
But did you ever have to find a balance within that? Because I don't know if it ever came up there, but I'm sure it has before, and some other programs.
I think a lot of what you do is kind of what you do with your teams each year. I mean, I know that we talk about as far as the goal setting and things like that. I mean, obviously each team's going to be different with what they do, and I think each team kind of takes on its own identity. And I think those things just morph into themselves. I don't think it's you set out in the fall and you say, okay, we're going to take the 2020 team and we're going to make it look just like the 2018. I think it's just impossible to do that. I think the part that you lean on is the success of the program. That the faces have changed, but the success has stayed the same, and a lot of that has to do with the buy-in to the way that we practice, or the way that we attack the games, the way that we go about our preparation, and the work that you do outside of practice and things like that. And I think that's the thing that we look at, is that when we were able to look at our when if you come up into our lounge area, and you see our drafts there, that and you can tell stories about that guy, and somebody asked, hey, what about this guy, and you can kind of reference what he was on the field, what he was in the classroom, what he was, when
I
it
love that.
was, 10 o'clock at night, and we came up here to make recruiting calls on the West Coast, and that guy's in the indoor and he's hitting, or, whatever. So I think that's the part that it's not so much, hey, we need you to be like 2008, or we need you to be like 2009, or why can't you be more like the 2012 team? It's not that. I don't think you compare teams to teams. I think what you do is you take the snapshots of those teams, and you just try to make sure that there's two or three things that will sustain over the years, and those are really those firm grounded foundations that you have, that you can really start with. Every house has a foundation, um, and if you really look, most of those foundations, they're almost identical. Now the house may be different when you build it to the top, but most of those foundations are pretty standard. And that's, I think, what we try to do, is we try to kind of build off of our foundation. And then once we put the house up, we know that house is going to look different than some other house that maybe we built in the past, but that foundation is going to be the same. And if we got a strong foundation, you can build whatever you want, it'll last.
Oh, really, really good, and great answer to a tough question. It's just something that I know that a lot of schools with a great tradition can lean on that, and I think that that's obviously a big plus whenever you have that. So I think that that's really good. And you also mentioned, so you took the job and then you took a high school job for 2 years and then you came back. So
Yeah.
was there anything, what was, take us through what that was like. Was there some animosity with some of the guys that you had recruited before? I mean, just kind of walk us through it. Was there anything that had changed in those 2 years that you had to fix, and just tell us your thought process behind that.
Yeah, I was 40. I was 40, over 40 years old, and found out that I was gonna. I had a sick at the time. I had a, I had two sons. I had one at the time who was, oh God, he was 10, and the other one was Brady was 10, and I think Brooksy was 6. I think maybe something like that because we found out we were having a daughter, and so we had tried and just wasn't part of God's plan. And so then obviously he had a different plan. And so I kind of had been here for 10 years and really just started looking around and saying, you know, I really haven't seen a whole lot of my first son's life. I really haven't seen a whole lot of my second son's life. I kind of, you know, we had won a national championship in 2012. It was one of those things like I felt like that everything that we came here to do, we had kind of done. And I wanted to, make sure that you know, that everybody was proud of what we had done and how we'd done it. And there's some really important people to me that have coached here that I wanted to make sure that they were satisfied with what was going on. I felt like we were just in a good place, like if we were in a place where if we were going to walk away, it was a good time to walk away. And so, I got the opportunity to go to the Baylor School in Chattanooga, which was a boarding school, and I was going to get the opportunity. We got to live on campus. My wife didn't have to work, and I kind of got to see the first little bit, the kind of those cool stages of your kids' lives and things that I had missed with my son. So it wasn't any animosity. I mean, Wesleyan's, it was a great place. It was great to me and my family. When I left, I didn't have really any intentions about coming back or doing anything. And but that was really it, man. Life kind of threw us kind of a change, and we made a decision and adapted to it at the time. And really, it was probably the best thing for me because I think it gave me a different perspective. The kids at the Baylor School were incredible. They were so motivated. They wanted so much to just work and learn. And really, it was kind of one of those deals where they were like sponges, and so you felt like you were kind of. I know in college sometimes yes, you're coaching and yes, you're doing, but you're also, it's a lot of maintaining personalities. It's a lot of, coaching personalities. It's a lot of coaching through life and those sort of things. But it was really like when we went to Baylor, it was almost like you kind of rolled your sleeves up and it was like, okay, here's how you hit again. And here's how you attack a ground ball. And here's how you run a coverage. And for some of those kids, they were seeing some of that for the first time in a different way. And so it was really kind of cool. So it was almost like it kind of rejuvenated things a little bit for me. So that when I came back, it was a lot more. I was a lot more excited than maybe I'd been the last couple years in like 14 and 15, and that's just kind of carried over to then because I think it goes back to the appreciation of the opportunities that you have, and I appreciated so much that opportunity at Baylor because I think it made me a better coach moving forward. I don't think without doing that, I don't think I would have. I think if I would have gotten out of baseball, then I would still be out. But I think having the opportunity to just kind of take a step back and do something that was different, and then come back to what you're comfortable doing, has made me a better coach.
Sure, sure. Completely get that and completely understand the thought process behind that. Then that's really cool. And again, it was just something that's unique that you got to be able to do. So I wanted you to be able to share that
Yeah,
with our guests and myself. And so let's dig into the nuts and bolts of what it's like on a daily basis there. So let's say that we are starting a new year, which is it's crazy. And for the guests that are listening, like 5 years down the road, we're currently going through the COVID-19 crisis, and
yeah,
so thoughts and prayers to everyone that's out there that is being affected by that, which I think is all of us. But anyway, so with the culture building aspect, so you got there early. You did a lot of the same things that they had done and put your own spin on them, and then you left, and then you came back, and now you're continuing to build on the tradition that you guys have had. And I love that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But tell us a little bit about what that looks like. So we can't follow you around for a week, but what are some different things that you guys do, you and your staff, just on a daily basis that really cements what it's like to play for you, or what it's like to be part of that program, and just what are you guys doing that sets you guys apart?
Well, I think it's different every year. I think we try to keep it, because you have so many returners and different things. So I kind of, when we talked yesterday, I kind of went through and started kind of looking at the snapshot of what this year is going to look like. And I thought it'd be great to kind of just put that out there as kind of what our plans are, with some of the things that we've done in the past and then some of the new things that we're going to do moving forward. One of the things that we do is we always, when we first get back, we ask our guys, a few questions, and we kind of spend, those weeks on those questions. Like we'll come in and before practice, we'll meet in our, we've got a new team meeting room that we renovated this past year. So we're excited about that. And that's going to kind of be kind of the hub of where we start our day. But, one of the questions that we ask on day one is, what sacrifices are you willing to make to win it? And we really spend a little bit of time on the win it part, when it is capitalized, in that sentence. And I think it's a three-prong approach for us. And I think that the biggest part is understanding what the three prongs are, but understanding what order they are in. And obviously, it's as a student, it's off the field, and then it's on the field. And the decisions that our guys have to make on a daily basis to be able to be successful in those three areas. Um, not everybody, is going to go off and play after college. For most guys, this is it. So there's a preparation that goes with not just making sure that we go out and we compete and we have a chance to win games, but there's also that preparation that they'll walk out of here with a degree. They'll walk out of here with an understanding of how to exist in society, working a 9 to 5 or working a job, whatever that job is, being accountable, making sure that they understand the value of time, making sure they understand the value of somebody else's time, and all those things. So that's really the first thing that we talk about, because the question that we ask is, what does win it mean? Well, they're obviously, try to win the national championship, try to win the conference, try to win this, try to win that. So it's really spending some time on that win it aspect and making sure that they understand that that's a three-prong approach. And again, the order in which that approach should be, prioritized, I guess. Then from there, we ask some other questions and things like that, but then we really get down to what our core values are. And I think this is the one thing that kind of has separated, our program a little bit, maybe, I don't know. But, one of the biggest things that we talk about each day is kind of, if we practice on Monday, we practice on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. Each day this year is going to kind of carry a theme, or it's going to kind of carry an expectation. So I think the one thing is when you have 18 to 22-year-olds, making them uncomfortable. They're always going to be comfortable on the field because that's what they know. But communication, and really digging into personal communication, is sometimes tough for them to talk about. They can sit. I've always said I can sit in my office and you can kind of hear the locker room from our office. It's just muddled talk, but it goes on forever. And then all of a sudden we get into a team meeting aspect, or we get into practice, and they go dead silent. And you can't get them to communicate. And I've always thought that that's funny, that when they're comfortable and they're talking about, just their day, or what they do or how they do it, it's an easy thing to talk about. But when they have to start talking about things that mean something to them, or people that mean something to them, or, sort of things, it's really hard for them to communicate. So just to give you an idea, like our core values are, appreciation, enthusiasm, competitiveness, teamship, and then accountability. And each one has kind of a theme and kind of a sentence that kind of explains them underneath. But to give you an example, like Mondays, if we came, like this year, we come out, we're going to practice. If we practice on Mondays, Monday's an appreciation day. So, we may look at, you, Jonathan, and sometime during practice, and we may say, hey, tell us the most important person that you're the most appreciative of, and why.
I love that.
And now you take a 22-year-old kid who, can talk about anything under the sun. And now all of a sudden he's got to really talk about, his mom who he was raised by a single mom who had to work, a job and another one to get him to where he is, and what that has meant to him, or a brother, or somebody like that. And now all of a sudden you you start to see guys in a different light. And I think it bonds guys together a little bit more when you have a better understanding. When you look at the accountability piece, in that line, in that sentence, in that accountability piece, you look at it and you say, okay, it says it puts that I'm responsible for our team. We're responsible for our team and ourselves. So I always ask the question and I say, okay, give me the order in which that goes down. And they'll kind of say, well, this, that, but it's not making them understand that you are responsible for the team first and yourself second. You've been we've always seen it. Four guys live together. All right. Three guys show up on time. One guy shows up late. You look at the other three guys and you go, hey, where was Johnny when he was asleep? Why didn't you wake him up? Well, coach, it's not my responsibility to wake him up. I'm not his mother. No, we'll go look at our core values. Yes, it is your responsibility because you're responsible for the team first and yourself second. And vice versa. So it's really, I think the biggest change that I've seen in culture is that back in my first, years or whatever, you tried to get lucky with culture. Hey, if we get the right guys together and they play well together, we'll have good culture. And I think as I've gotten older, the focus changes. When I was 29 and 30 and 31, I was trying to win games because I thought that was the identity of how you move forward and how you got another job and and I think as I've gotten older and my kids have grown up and I've kind of watched that in my own home and seen that process and what that's looked like, it really makes you understand that culture is it's a learned trait. If you have a plan to teach it, and you've got open-minded kids, you can teach culture and you can bond people together. And I think that's where, for me, things have evolved so much for me in the coaching realm of things is that, you used to try to culture was luck. Now you're trying to teach it. And I think that's the biggest change for me right now. So that's kind of, just a snapshot of some of the things that we do to kind of create that culture. I mean, the way that we recruit, a lot of the guys that we have they're 24 months to 12-month guys. We don't do a lot of just straight guys that come from high school. It's a lot of transfers. It's a lot of JC guys. So you have a limited window to really kind of try to bond these guys together and get them kind of dialed into to what makes this program successful. And it's not just what they do on the field; it's what they do. It's that culture piece. And so, like I said, you have a limited amount of time. So the fall is so important for us to really hammer home, who we are and what we want to be about, so that when we hit the ground running in the spring, whatever team we have has a pretty good idea of what we need to be doing moving forward to be successful.
No, that's fantastic. And again, thank you so much for giving us a peek inside what you guys are doing on a daily basis, which is really, really cool, and a ton of practical examples. So I text a mutual friend of ours, Butch Jeffin, and I said, what are some things I should ask Billy? And he said the one that I can actually use, he said, ask him how he gets his players to play so hard. And I think that that's coming from Butch, and then obviously coming from a coach from outside of the program, that's a huge compliment. Yeah. And so walk us through, what you think leads into that.
One of the really cool things that when I sat down all my first year in that summer, in those first 3 weeks, and I asked, one of the things that was it was so glaring to me that when you played a Wesleyan team, it was just the aggressiveness and it was just you know, the pace and how fast they played, but how controlled it was. And just, the diving and the just trying to take the extra base and do those things and making the dirt ball read. It was just so evident that that's, part of what they were. And so I asked Ashley and I said, how do you, and he said, Ashley was a big Duke basketball fan. And so he said, the mentality that we wanted to take on when I was coaching here is we wanted to play Duke basketball on dirt. And then you go back and you watch a Mike Krzyzewski coach team and you see how fast they play and how aggressive they are and, smacking the floor, to play defense. And one guy smacks the floor and then everybody else smacks the floor because that's that locked everybody in. And it made really a whole lot of sense to me. And I started to kind of, talk about how, you build that process and do that. And I think our practices really speak to that. We don't we practice fast, and I think that's the one thing that is the biggest adjustment for our guys when they come in, because we play in some aspects at times we play a walk around sport. It's there's time in between pitches, there's time in between innings, there's time on a pitching change. There's a lot of standing around sometimes if you make it idle time. You know what I mean? So a lot of the way that we practice, a lot of the way that our drills are set up, a lot of the way that our scrimmages are set up, a lot of ways that we've set things up is built around the pace of the game, the speed of the game. And what we try to tell our guys is we're going to practice at this pace. For some of you, it's going to be extremely difficult. After 3 weeks, you'll get used to it and you'll figure it out. But we put an emphasis on rewarding that kind of play. When we do our scrimmages and things like that, you take an extra base, you make a dirt ball read, you make a dive and play. You do those things, you're going to get rewarded. Your team's going to get rewarded with extra points or extra runs or whatever. The one thing that we don't want our guys to do is be afraid of, I'm not going to lay out for fear of this ball is going to the wall, or I'm not making that dirt ball read for fear I make the wrong read and I get thrown out and it's the third out of the inning. I'm not whatever it is. I mean, I'm not gonna throw this ball across the infield. I'm not gonna throw this ball to the backside bag for fear of throwing it away and that guy taking an extra base. Uh, we want our guys to be aggressive, and we promote that. We're okay uh, you know with those things. I go back to our national championship run in 2019, and I can go back to two back picks that got us out of huge innings with two outs, and they were back picks to third base. And if you don't promote and if you don't give guys the autonomy and the freedom to be able to make those plays in those times, and then also be willing to take the consequence that goes with it, that guy's never going to make that play. And so I think that's the part is just the way that we practice and the culture that we practice with, and the speed that we practice with, and really the expectation that we practice with. There's been a lot of guys that have been sent home on a lot of days because they didn't want to live up to the expectation of how we practice. So there's been a lot of guys that have said this isn't for me because of the expectation of the way we practice. And the biggest goal for us, Jonathan, is we want the games to be easy for our guys, because what we want to do is practice at a pace that forces the other team when they show up on game day to play at a pace that they're not used to playing at. Because we kind of pride ourselves on practices at a level that you have to kind of move your way up to if you're going to play us and play us well.
Oh, really, really good. And again, thank you for sharing that. That's some great information. And so if they're not practicing hard, you just send them home.
A lot of times, I said, and it only happens a couple times. But yeah, there's been times that we've sent some high scholarship guys home that were Division I transfers that walked in week one and said, "I'm not running a hard 90 every time I hit a ground ball." Well, maybe tomorrow you will. So that's I think sometimes you look at it and you go, for most guys, this is the last house on the block. Nobody woke up. I've said this a million times. Nobody woke up on signing day and laid down I'll use the state of Tennessee as an example. Nobody laid down a Vanderbilt hat, a Tennessee hat, and a Wesleyan hat, and kind of did the whole shuffle and picked the Wesleyan hat. You know what I mean? So for most guys, they're here because something didn't work out, um, whether it be that they had to transfer because they were promised something they didn't get, the playing time or whatever. Academically, they didn't make it. Something happened off the field. Everybody's got a story, and for most guys, this is the last house on the block, man. So I think that's made us who we are, because once guys realize that, they realize that it can be a really special place for them to finish up their career and have a chance to win some games and still have the opportunity to move on and keep playing. But I also think that there's times that they need to know that they're not doing us a favor by being here either.
I really like that. You're holding the values that you hold tightly, and you're holding them accountable for them after they already had it ingrained in them every single day. So I think that that's really good. And has it gotten to a point now where the players will do the same thing to them, and you can kind of take a step back and let them handle it?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I can go back and reference players throughout the years who were great at those sort of things. I mean, Dale Ricketts, who was a catcher here, and Stephen Branca, who now is the baseball ops guy at the University of Central Florida. There were times in 2012 when those guys stopped practice, and I didn't even have to. We were in a drill and we'd screwed it up 3 times, and Dale Ricketts was from Australia, and he'd kind of with that accent go, "Coach, give me a minute," and he pulls everybody up, and 30 seconds later, we're back to practice, and it's like, okay, you can hit the next ground ball. I got it taken care of, and so yeah, there's been times where we've had some great leadership that was vocal. There's also been times that we've had some great leadership that was by example. Cole Belair and Braden Mosley in 2019 were 2 guys that were both Division One transfers. Braden was a transfer from Southeast Missouri State. Cole was a transfer from the University of Illinois, and both guys weren't maybe as vocal leaders, but the way they went about their business and the example that they set on a daily basis, from off the field to in the classroom to uh, to on the field was outstanding. And so it just kind of made you look and say, hey, you know, these are guys that have played at the highest level. These are guys that were successful playing at that level, and I've got to kind of match what they're doing, even though nobody's telling me I have to do it. It's the example that they set. So I think it's yeah. A lot of times, I've always said I think in this program, when those guys that transfer down from Division One schools, when they come into this program, and they're always going to be some of them are always going to be your better players. And I've always said when those guys look like when they get done with their eligibility, when you look back on it, and those guys maybe played here for a year or 2 years or whatever, but you thought they'd started their career here, then those were probably some of your more successful teams because your better players were your best people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you ask the, I think that if you ask the majority of our listeners the best teams they ever coached or they played on, the coaches weren't the drivers of the bus. They may have been, I mean, physically driving the bus, but they weren't doing that on a daily basis. The players were, and I think that you can think of numerous examples to be able to do that. And you mentioned earlier that you talked about the recruiting trail, so I want to hit on that a little bit. Is there anything in particular that you look for? And you guys take a lot of JUCO guys, or at least you mentioned that. And so, what are some things that you go out and you look for that you're like, okay, that's a Wesleyan guy right there?
I think the first and foremost, man, is I've been blessed with really, really good assistants that were really connected guys and that wanted to work and wanted to get out. I can go back and think of Matt McGuire, who is now just stepped down as the head coach at Roanoke College. You look at John Hendricks, who John is now the pitching coach at Wake Forest, and you look at Stephen Baker, who is now an area guy with the San Diego Padres. Brad Neffendorf, who is now the head coach at LSU Shreveport, and now Zach Sterner, who sits in that spot, and Adam Larimore, who are our assistants now. And I think that's where it starts, man, is hiring these young guys who are hungry and want to get out there and want to work and are trying to do the same thing kind of at a young age that I was trying to do, was just try to, get a job and see where the next one's going to be and kind of go from there. So I'm so appreciative of all those guys and what they've meant to the program and the years that they were here. And Eric Moss, who is now assistant athletic director at University of North Alabama, was here in 2007. So I think that's kind of where it starts. The next thing is I don't know if there's a magic formula that we look at or anything like that. I think we have an idea of what kind of works for us, what kind of kid works here. We don't really have a system that we recruit to. I think it changes each year. We're trying to find the best players and then kind of bring all those guys in the fall and then kind of just let them kind of shake a tree and see what falls out at the end of the fall. You know what I mean? And so I think the one thing that we do is we're not afraid to take anybody. There's a ton of guys that have been on our roster that there was a mistake that was made that got them to where they were. I think with each guy that we recruit, the conversation that we have when we offer them the opportunity to, from a financial standpoint, and then the opportunity to be a part of the program, the one thing that we tell them is we use the white chalkboard, mentality, and we say, hey, I want you to visualize on this wall that there's a white chalkboard. And now I just I just imagine that everything that has gotten you here, the grades, the off the field issue, the whatever it is, now what I want you to do, the empty promises, whatever it is, uh, I want you to take it and for the first time, somebody's going to wipe all that off. All right. So now what do you see? You see a white chalkboard. There's nothing on it. So from this point forward, I don't care what got you here. All I care about is what you decide to put on that chalkboard, you know, for the rest of your time here. And for most guys, I think it's almost a relief. We never bring it up. I never look at one of our kids who transferred, and the reason why he transferred was because he had an off the field issue, and then look at him and go, never going to change. It's just like when you went to so and so university. Um, you know, we don't bring them up. We don't talk about those things. We just give them an opportunity, but we tell them if you're going to write the same story here that you wrote everywhere else, you're probably not going to last very long here either. And so I think there's a level of comfort to go. You know what? Okay, my screw ups are in the past, and I've always said that they should do a last chance you for NAIA baseball or just NAIA sports and just pick a school because it's not that's not necessarily what it is, but it's a second and third chance place for a lot of guys, and it's really cool when you watch guys that are coming uh, from these places where they've had where there was an expectation and they just didn't live up to it. And then to get a second or third shot and to watch the finished product walking out the door. Does it happen with everybody? No. We let guys go? Yeah. I mean, we've given guys that same opportunity and they can't get out of their own way. But there's a lot more guys that walk out the door that have changed and have kind of really kind of turned themselves into to what they wanted to be when they walked into whatever door they walked in when they were 18 years old, and so that's pretty cool too as well.
Yeah, definitely. And let's hit on that a little bit. Let's talk about the ownership aspect because again, you and I both talked earlier about how the best teams are the ones that the players drive the bus. And I think the best players are the ones who own their own career. So I think that there are some parallels there. What are some different ways that you help players to do that? And I think that we're all kind of we're reaching a point to where it's like, okay, we want our players to own their career, but how do we do that? And I think the more tools that we can have in our toolbox to be able to do that, it's obviously going to help us. But what are some different ways that you help your players with that?
I think it's just the accountability piece. I mean, I think it's really just kind of staying. I the way I can explain it is, I remember we were in Lewiston in 2019, and Steve Less, who Steve is the assistant at Georgia Gwinnett, and I've got a ton of respect for their program and Jeremy and Steve and Kyle and those guys. And so we were at breakfast one morning, and he said that was at breakfast the morning before, and he said that one of our kids was eating kind of close to him in the lounge area, because everybody's in different hotels and things like that. And he said he just kind of asked him. He said, "What's it like playing at Wesleyan?" Or what's it like playing for Coach Barry or something like that? And the kid said, he goes, "In the fall, it's absolutely miserable." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Everything that we do wrong is addressed. Whether it doesn't matter what it is. It could be that my shirt tail's out and or my hat's not on the right way or something. But every single thing gets addressed." And he said, but then all of a sudden you look up and it's like April, and he hasn't said anything to anybody for 2 months. And he said, then you start to figure it out that it's tough, 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 tough till we get that aspect of we and everybody is on the same page, and then he lets off, and then it just kind of you kind of figure out what's going on, and everybody's kind of bought into it, and you kind of go from there. Now, does that happen with every team? No. Now, did that happen with the 2019 team? I guess, because the kid said it. I didn't say it. But I think that's one of the biggest things that I've looked at is that too many times we are afraid to discipline or to hold accountable our our players, our kids, whatever, for fear that we're going to upset them, for fear that they're not going to, you know, we live it. I mean, Jonathan, hell, we live in a transfer world now, man. I mean, I don't like what's going on. I'm transferring. I don't like the way you talk to. I'm transferring. I don't like the way I'm transferring. Um, so I think that we're afraid sometimes to take, said player from said junior college or from said university and hold him to the same accountable standard that we're going to hold this other guy to because we're afraid if we piss this guy off, he's going to leave. And I think that's where is the balance is that, Nick Saban said, I mean, my program is going to be what I tolerate. And so, it's not that I want to put my finger on him. It's not that we as coaches want to put our finger on him. It's just we want to make sure that they're doing the things that they need to do on a daily basis to not just be successful for the year that they play with us or for the 2 years that they play with us, but for when they become an adult and start having to, I call it adulting all the time. I mean, when you start having to, when you start adulting, which means, when you start paying bills, when you start having to wake up and, not just get yourself ready, but you got to get two other kids ready, or when you are responsible for somebody else's daughter or things like that, they don't realize how close they are to that. You know what I mean? They're still thinking, I didn't realize how close I was to that. You know what I mean? I mean, I got out of school and it was like, okay, I'm gonna take advantage of the 4 spring breaks that I didn't get because I had to go jump on a bus and go play somewhere. I'm gonna, the next 4 years, I'm gonna make up for the 4 years that I lost for somebody telling me where I had to be and what I had to do and all those things. I remember I said I'm never going to the weight room again. Once I get out of school, and those sort of things, and all that comes back around. But I think that's just the biggest thing is that we have a standard. It's a standard that has kind of gone through many coaches, Coach Wayne Norfleet, Coach Ashley Lawson, Willie Bosk, Travis Watson, myself. I mean, it's kind of like the face has changed, but the standard has stayed the same. And I think that's the biggest piece is just making them understand that there's a way that we're going to do things, and it may not be the way that you've always done it. But we're not going to ask you to do it. I'm not going to ask our kids to do anything that we as coaches wouldn't expect of our own kids or expect of ourselves. And I think and I think there's a level of respect that goes with that. So I thought it was a great compliment, that obviously that he recognized that yeah, things are tough in the fall. He's on us, and it's kind of a constant thing, but you really kind of see it, back off, and then it just becomes our team as you go through the season into the postseason, and he takes more of a backseat to what's going on because that's what his main focus in the fall is, to get us to where we can kind of steer our own ship in the spring.
I love that. One of the things that I think that we have a lot, and you talked about, you don't want to upset the player. And one of the things that we as coaches, our job is to do is to help make them better. And so we've touched on the culture and the behavior aspect of it, but we also have to help them make changes on a field. And so let's say that
Sure.
you're recruiting a guy and he's there for 6 weeks in the fall, and you've noticed that he needs to make a change. And we can talk about whatever you want, but
Yeah.
what does that conversation look like with him? Because again, with me being more familiar with the swing than with pitching, if I'm
Uh-huh.
asking a player to change something in their swing, it's like asking them to change themselves because their swing is
Right.
part of themselves. And so
Sure.
even I was, and even you were hesitant to make those changes if we didn't have evidence or we didn't have trust in a relationship with said person. So take us through what a conversation like that would look like, and kind of walk us through it a little bit.
I think it's different for each guy. Like I think what our pitchers go through and what our hitters go through, and I think it's two different things. I think one, it's the way you recruit. I think when we recruit a high school kid, and we've gotten very fortunate to get some really good high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at him and you say, okay, this is a guy that we can make some changes with, that we can do some things with, and we have those conversations sometimes during the recruiting process with the parents and with the kids. These are some of the things that we see, and these are some of the things that we'd like to, maybe fool with a little bit and things like that. The other part is that when you recruit a 20-year-old who's coming from his second year at JUCO, or you recruit a 20-year-old who's coming in as a junior from a Division I school, I just don't know how many changes you can make. I think the biggest thing is I think as the hitters, as we approach hitting here, it's more about the mental aspect, how you're pitched, what counts, what you see, those sort of things, and it's really just that approach to how you're being attacked and how you're attacking back. I've always said, God told me one time that if you start kinkering with a guy, like, you take a guy that's open and you close him up, or you take a guy that's closed and you open him up, or you take a guy that's got high hands and you drop him down, or you take low hands and pull him up, and those sort of things. That usually that's about a 6 month process for that guy to buy into it, and then about another 6 month process for him to be able to relearn it. Well, nobody's got that kind of time. I don't have 12 months for a guy to go on the shelf because he's thinking about whether he wants to do it and then trying to figure out how to do it. So I think one, you have to be pretty sure about the guy that you're bringing in because that guy's got to, that the guy's got to produce for you. And, so I think the mentality, I think you can make some small tweaks here and there, and those sort of things. And again, I think it's a trust thing. I mean, I think that's where our assistants are so good is because they're so hands on. And I think that's what's so great about this level is because there are no restrictions on time and things like that. Not that we overwork our guys or anything like that, but if it's 10 o'clock in the morning and one of our pitchers wants to grab Coach Sterner and wants to get put on video and wants to start tweaking mechanics and doing different things, he can do that because we have that freedom to be able to do that. If one of our hitters wants to come in at 10 o'clock in the morning and grab Coach Larimore and get in there and start working on hand path or shortening up a little bit or direction and things like that, they can go in there and do that. So I think one, it's the trust that's built. And like I said, I think you made it a point to say a conversation. I think that's always the most important thing is to sit down to make sure that what you're seeing with that guy's swing or with the way he fields a ground ball, with the way his mechanics are on the mound is the same thing that he sees. Because if you're trying to fix a problem for somebody that doesn't think they have a problem, then that's going to be a little bit of a process. So I think the conversation is key, and it's making them understand that there's some things that we see that would make a huge improvement on, what they do in the box or what they do in the dirt or what they do on the mound.
Love it, love it. I love the depth behind that and giving the different examples from the different players that you work with. That's really, really good. Let's talk a little bit about competition. And you obviously you sound like a competitive person, and that's what we've talked about quite a bit. And we're always trying to use different competitions and different practices. So what are some different ones that we can steal from you?
We end every day with some kind of competition. There's always a winner, there's a loser. Some of ours are maybe a little bit more out of the box than what others have done. Obviously, coach pitch scrimmages. We always try to do some of those machine pitch scrimmages. We do some of that. We do some point games where we kind of turn the scoreboard off, and it's all built around points. So, we may say that, a dirt ball read is this many points, a diving play is this many points, getting out of the box and turning a single into a double is this many points, and really take the negative off of it and just kind of get the positive into it. So, the way we do our Fall World Series, I think, is interesting. We play a best 2 out of 3 at our Fall World Series, but we don't play 2 out of 3 that if the first 2 games are won by the same team, then the series is over. What we do is we play all 3 games, and then during that process, we play. It's the total number of runs, hits combined over a 3 game set, and then whatever errors are made, you take off that total score. So technically, somebody could win all 3 games, but they could get out hit, and then that total score. So really what it does is it takes the emphasis off the scoreboard and it really puts the emphasis on the person getting their job done, because the more hits I get, the more runs I score, the less errors we make, because this is an overall competition and it's not just built on just the game. I think sometimes we get wrapped up in just the game. I've always said that there's times, and you've probably seen it in your coaching career, where we played terrible, got nothing out of the day, and we won 3-1 against a team that may not be on the same level as us. And I understand that that's baseball, but your kids walk out of the park and they think, well, we won the game. Well, we didn't really win. We won the game, but we really didn't win the day. And I think that's the most important thing to us is how many days are we winning, not how many games are we winning. And so that's why we kind of compete at the end of practice. One of the other cool things that we do a 7 in a row. We do a 9 hit in a row drill where we split them up into 2 teams of 9, uh, put them on opposite sides of the shell. The conversation gets pretty spirited, but the goal is just to go in there and off our guy, off our assistant that's throwing BP, just get 9 consecutive hits. Just put the ball in play, 9 times to where you're working 9 hits. And one of our other assistants or myself is the judge, and it's really interesting to hear the conversations from the other team because we kind of let them jaw at one another a little bit. And so it's always interesting when you get to 6 and 7 hits in a row, how spirited some of the conversations get that we almost have to back them off a little bit. But we were trying to create an environment that just nobody wants to lose, and we're trying to create an environment where guys are going to, that last 20 minutes of practice or 25 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever we set aside, that one, they look forward to it. And two, they're going to get after it because they know that when practice is over with, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And I think that's just kind of the way life is. I mean, there's days that I've walked out of here and you know we didn't we maybe had 3 recruiting calls and we got turned down 3 times, and I'm defeated, and it's I go home and it's a rough night, and we lost that day. We didn't, we couldn't figure out a way to get those 3 guys to pull the trigger to come here. Somebody else did a better job than we did. Next thing you go home and again we won the day, so I think that's what you just try to impress upon them is understanding the value of competition, but also understanding what competition means. And so I think that's like I said, I don't know if we do anything that's really better or worse than what somebody else does, but I think there's just interesting ways to compete. I mean, there's days that we don't do anything with a baseball. We come in and we split them up into 4 teams, and we may do a situ. We've done it where we've done uh, plate loaded, relay races around the bases where one team starts on one side of home plate, the other team starts on the other side of home plate. You're timing guys, and they're doing it with 45-pound plates, and they're having to touch third, and whoever gets to second first, and the amount of time, and that may be one competition that we do, and then we may move to another competition where it's a tug of war, and all 4 teams are competing in a double elimination. We've done dodgeball tournaments, so there's days during the fall when we don't even pick up a baseball. We just kind of get them out of baseball, but we have them compete in stuff that they competed in when they were, in the 6th grade or 5th grade in elementary school and middle school, and or a wiffle ball game or something. But the fall can be monotonous, so I think you really have to kind of get creative with how you go about you know, you can only play the same face in the same jersey so long before it gets kind of stale. So I think those are probably the creative things that we do is we go to the Y and we have we have them jump in the pool and we do relay races in the pool. And it's so funny because you see the guys that are pretty athletic that can swim and the guys that you think are pretty athletic that can't swim, or they,
They
they,
just
they
think
call it swimming. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I think that's the thing is, man, just get out of your comfort zone, and it doesn't have to be baseball all the time. If you really want to watch kids compete on something, put them in something that has nothing to do with baseball that little kids do, and watch 18 to 22-year-old kids go nuts. And you really start to find out, the guys that are going to compete because they're not too cool to play dodgeball. They're not too cool to do the tug of war. They're not too cool to jump in a pool or whatever it is that you're not too cool to play a wiffle ball game. That they get in there and you really kind of get surprised sometimes because you start to see some of these quiet guys that are kind of unassuming. And then all of a sudden you put them in a competitive situation where they're doing something that's fun and it's not baseball related. You start to kind of look around and go, man, that guy, when push comes to shove, I'm going to put that guy, I'll walk down the alley with that guy. And I wouldn't have known that if we would have just been playing, because for most of them, baseball's it's where they're comfortable. It's what they've done their entire life. It's what they came here to do, to get their education and to play. So now all of a sudden we put them in something that has nothing to do with baseball. It has nothing to do with playing a baseball game, turning on the scoreboard, playing 9 innings, getting 3 outs, and you start to find out a little bit more about some of your individuals, which is pretty cool.
absolutely, absolutely nailed that one. I love that. So we're gonna go ahead and skip to the lightning section, and so these are just some quick hitter questions. Just want to hear your thoughts. If I don't provide any commentary, then obviously you did a great job. But
All
what's
right,
something that what is the biggest lesson that you learned as a young coach?
man, is that it's not about me. I think that's the biggest thing. It's I think the one thing, my biggest regret in my career, in this career or whatever you want to call it, is the amount of relationships that I probably left on the table, because of thinking that it was about me and it was about the wins and me maybe getting the next opportunity or whatever. And I think once I learned that I don't really matter that much. That I have there's a there's a job that I have to do, and if I do that job and our kids are successful, then you don't really even know that that anybody else was a part of it besides that. So I think that's, if I could go back and do anything, man, it would be that it's not about me, and to put myself, really at the back burner of what goes on, and promote whatever program it was or whatever kid it was a lot more.
Great answer. What is something that you want your players to do that may go unnoticed by most people, but you think is important? So the example that I give with every show is whenever I was a high school and we coached catchers, I would always have them when it like the first time that they went out there just to shake the umpire's hand and tell him his name and say yes sir, and then just to establish that relationship. Is there anything that comes to mind that's similar to that?
I want them to wake up every day and to kind of attack their day, whether it be in the classroom, whether it be on the field, whether it be off the field. But I want them to attack, each day. I want them to wake up and look in the mirror, and when they leave their place, say, "Is somebody going to take me seriously today?" If I walk in somewhere, is somebody, if I walk in the classroom and I sit down, am I going to be taken seriously? If I walk on the field and I attack pregame and I attack BP and I attack these, am I being taken seriously? Um, if I walk into a restaurant and I have a Weslyan shirt on, is somebody going to is somebody going to take me seriously? And I kind of tell them that it's that whole process of the job interview. And when you get up in the morning, I tell our guys all the time, when you get up in the morning, when you show up late, when you kind of just throw on some flip flops and some joggers, and you got your socks tucked into your joggers, and you've got a hood on, or you got a sweatshirt on with a hood over top, and it's 75, 80 degrees, and you're the only idiot with a sweatshirt on. How many people are taking you seriously? And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we try to press upon our guys, is that I want them to kind of look at every situation that they're in, and understand that the way they present themselves, the way they talk, the way they communicate, the way they walk in, that first impression is always going to be probably the biggest tell on whether you're successful or not successful, and to really kind of buy into that on a daily basis.
Love it. And then if you could buy one book for or just a resource in general for every listener on the show, what would that be?
Oh man, I'm not a big reader, so this is a tough question for me. I'm a
Okay.
more of a I don't really. Oh man, you know, I think for me, the one book I mean, I've read more than one book, but I think the two biggest books that I've ever read, it sounds terrible. That really came out wrong. Um, I think the one was the Energy Bus. One of my former players actually got me in on it. Like I say, Stephen Branca, who played shortstop here for us in 2011 and 2012, he read it and was telling me about it. This was years ago, but I read it, and that was a good one, because I think it kind of spoke to just his personality and my personality, and kind of what that looked like. I love. I'm not a Duke basketball fan. I'm a Carolina fan, but I think Mike Krzyzewski. I'm more of a guy that reads books about programs. I think I don't necessarily know the names of them or things like that, but I love the books about. Uh, you know programs and seasons. You can kind of find those books, and it kind of, a championship run, and it kind of starts on day one and kind of takes you through, how they got to the point that they got to, and those sort of things. So, I think things like that. But yeah, I mean, if I'm picking a book for somebody to read that wants to kind of understand how it works from the top down, and that you really have to have an expectation for yourself if you're going to have an expectation for anybody else, it'd be that.
All right, so I'm going to open up the mic for you, and first off, let me be the first to say that I really do appreciate your time, and I know that I've learned a ton today. I've taken a ton of notes, and really do appreciate just the depth that you went to today. So again, thank you for coming on and sharing
Yeah.
so much with us. But I'm going to open up the mic for you and mute myself, and this is going to be the outro. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners before you go?
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've always tried to say is for young guys, man, that are getting into this profession, just understand, that the relationship piece is one of the biggest pieces. I think when I look back on this whole thing, it's going to be so much more about the relationships than it was about anything else, and that's really twofold for me, because, like I said, I've left some relationships on the table in my years, and those are the ones that I wish I could go back and rectify, do a better job with, and stop that guy from walking out the door and those sort of things. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that you're coaching. I think when I started to learn that I was coaching somebody else's kids, and how would I want somebody to identify with my kids. And it's a little bit different, because I identify with my kids maybe differently than somebody else would. But I think that's the biggest thing, man, is grab onto those relationships, and really grab on to the people that you're around, and obviously the coaches, and that's I've got some of the best relationships with guys that work in the same profession as I do, and so I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to sit down and kind of tell my story, and how we've gotten from point A to point B, and I'm interested to see what X, Y, and Z looks like, because I'm closer to that than I am A, B, and C. But I'm always thankful for the opportunity to continue to learn. I mean, I listen to these things just as much as anybody does, and pop them in the car. And my son's playing. My son's play travel ball, so this gives me a great opportunity when I'm by myself to kind of pop in and listen to these things, and at 45 years old still learn, from guys that are older than younger than me. And so I think I think if one thing can come out of the negativity that we're dealing with right now, with the virus and other things, is how much information has been shared over the course of, this, April to August, type of deal. Is that the podcast and just the Zoom calls, and how much information guys have shared, and it really just shows the level of community that baseball presents itself. That just because it's our idea, or because it was somebody else's idea, doesn't mean you can't share it, and guys use it. I think it's one of the sports that growing the game is so much at the top of guys' priority list, and I think you've seen that over the last since the pandemic, and since those things, that everybody could have just kind of gone silent, but baseball coaches and baseball guys kind of stood up and still promoted the game, and I think the promotion of the game is always going to be the most important thing moving forward, and that's what I'm really proud of, our community, and what's happened over the last 4 or 5 months. So, and thank you for the opportunity to jump on today, and I really enjoyed it, and would love to do it again sometime.
Thank you for listening to Ahead of the Curve. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, which could include Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please share it on social media to help get the word out. Once again, thank you for joining us.